This is Chris Haggerty, a professional DP with zero experience flying a drone. In this video, I'm going to teach him how to fly a drone and go over 10 tips on how to do cinematography with a drone from beginner to pro. Let's get started. Tip number 1, use ND filters. Now, of course, depending on what drone you have to buy the ND filters for that drone. In my case, I'm using these from Freewell, and we're using the DJI Mini 3 Pro. DJI makes ND filters, Polar Pro makes ND filters, lots of other companies make these, and I highly recommend picking up a set. Now, the reason you need ND filters on these drones is that often you can't adjust your aperture setting to give us that proper 180-degree shutter angle rule. Now, if you're not familiar with that in terms of the cinematography language that I just used, basically you want your shutter speed to be double of what your frame rate is to give you the proper motion blur. So in our case, on this drone, we have to shoot at 1/150th of a second to have that beautiful cinematic motion blur. So using an ND allows us to get that proper shutter angle, and it makes us look much more professional. You doing okay back there, Chris?
I got it.
Number 2, calibrate your GPS. Now, Chris, don't get ahead of yourself and start flying right away after you set up your ND filter, because if you don't calibrate your GPS, the drone doesn't know where to go home. This is a really important feature, especially for beginners, because if you're out flying and you get the drone lost, you can push a button and say, come home, come home. But if you don't calibrate it, it's gonna go home to wherever home was last. So in your case, you actually worked with a DP that did this.
Yeah, I was with a drone op who didn't calibrate the GPS, and when the remote died, instead of returning back to where it was, it triggered it to go back over the ocean to Los Angeles, where we were from, even though we were filming in Santa Barbara.
So moral of the story is calibrate your drone before you get started. So we've calibrated the GPS, we've placed our ND filter on our drone, and we're ready to take off. Chris, are you ready to put the drone on the ground?
Yes.
All right, let's go. What are you doing? Leads me to point number 3. Make sure to always put your drone on a flat surface, especially something that's not in the grass, Chris, because look, the blades would just slice this up. It would just fumble around. Even though this has low grass material here, still no bueno. Put it on a solid surface. That way, nothing will obstruct the blades and it will rise perfectly. You ready to take off?
I think so.
Let's do it. All you gotta do is take the stick, go in and down at the same time. Look at that.
Yeah.
Starts her up. Left stick is up, down.
Okay.
Right stick is forward, back.
Okay.
So just don't even touch the right stick.
Yeah.
Just go straight up.
Nice. Look how stable it is. Cool. Okay. And do you land by doing the same thing?
Yeah, just go straight down. Go down, don't touch anything, it'll just do it in itself.
I did.
Tip number 4, when you're flying and when you're in doubt, let go of the sticks. Like that. That's right, Chris was about to hit that tree right there, but because we're in the normal mode and because the drone has accelerometers built into it and the GPS sync from earlier, calibrate your GPS, the drone is able to lock itself in one location. Now, there are other modes that actually don't do this. A lot of professionals turn that feature off because they want the momentum of the drone to just kind of float, which is kind of cool. But we're not doing that right now. When you're a beginner, stay in the normal mode, and if you're ever feeling scared, just let go of the sticks and the drone will just hover exactly where you are. Tip number 5, always fly line of sight. Now, as you can see, Chris is operating the drone here, but he's able to see the drone with his naked eyes.
Scandalous.
The technology with the wireless feed is really amazing, which means it can be tempting to actually fly it in places where you can't see it with your naked eyes, but it's strongly ill-advised and very unsafe. You never know where a power line may be. You may not see the tree that's right next to it. In fact, professionals have somebody on staff standing there watching the drone line of sight.
Oh, that's hot.
So it's very important. Keep your eyeballs on the drone at all times.
There it is.
Tip number 6, have an A and a B point in mind when you're filming. That basically means have a start and an end in mind before you do your shot. Now, it is fun to take the drone up, have a camera in the sky, and you can kind of get lost in the fact that, wow, I'm actually flying, and it's really cool, and that's true, but you still need to be thoughtful of the cinematography of what you're doing, because we're telling stories using these moving images. So in this case, we're having an A point of the camera pointing down at the ground, and a B point panning up, showing the park and showing the trees. It could be as simple as that. You could spin around an object. You could follow somebody from this point to that point. It's just really important to be thoughtful of your start and end when you're filming. Tip number 7, have fun with the cinematic modes built into the drone software. Now in my case, on the DJI Mini 3 Pro, there's these features called quick action and master shots. Basically, there's these automated moves that you can do with the drone. Now, your mileage may vary based on the drone you're using, but in my case, I can do what's called a droney, which basically locks onto your subject and pulls back. You can do 360 spins, you can do all sorts of cool things with this. Certain drones have limitations on that, so make sure to do some tests before you show up on a shoot day utilizing these moves. But I say use them, they're super cool. And robots do smoother moves than humans sometimes. Tip number 8, when you're ready, switch to sport mode. Sport mode equals fast, but it does remove some of the obstacle avoidance features if your drone has them. So make sure you're flying line of sight when you're doing this, but when you're ready, switching to sport mode really takes things up a notch. Cinematic aerial shots are typically shot on real helicopters, so when you're flying kind of slow, it's kind of obvious that you're not using a helicopter. And in my experience, when I've switched to sport mode and I've gone full tilt as fast as possible on the drone, and some of these drones can actually go up to 40 miles an hour, it just looks so much more professional. And because you're up so high and the lens is so wide, you need a little bit of speed to give some real sense of motion and scale. So when you're ready, switch to sport mode and go fast. But again, make sure you're flying line of sight. Tip number 9, active track. Play with it, use it, it's fun. On certain DJI drones, you can actually select your subject, draw a little square over them, hit a little button or whatever, and it actually tracks the person as they're moving. You could be on a bike, it could be a car, it could be a train, or in this case, we could be walking in a field and it's tracking us auto-magically. Chris is doing it manually right now. That's old school. Get this out of here. You can do it with active track. Tip number 10, catch the drone from the sky. This is a pro one. Ow! Grab it and then go upside down. Again, this is only for small drones. If you're using an Inspire 2, for example, do not come anywhere near that drone. It could slice your hand off. This one's a little safer, but it is a pro tip. Granted, this is called beginner to pro, so therefore pro tip. Be very careful with the drone. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and watch this one. You might enjoy it.
Did you just go over there to fart?
No, I scared the cicada, so it's shut up.
Oh.
That was a